Hello everybody and welcome back to your brand new video on Hypixel Skyblock. So in Skyblock, one of the most popular weapons for the mage class is called the 100mm Midas Staff. Now this weapon has been in the game for a very long time and holds a pretty significant part of Skyblock history. Even I own a Midas Staff when I used to be a non-Hyperion mage. However, today I'm going to be showing you guys why this staff absolutely sucks now, and if you're not aware, how it got completely destroyed in a completely unintentional update by the admins. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So, magic damage is one of the main things that mages use to clear in dungeons. And magic damage, just like regular damage, has a lot of factors that can increase it. Of this, there is magic damage scaling with catacombs levels, pets, and with catacomb stars. Now let's take a look at this Hyperion right here. As you can see, in the overworld, it has 486,000 damage to nearby enemies. Now, why is this number so oddly specific? This is because you take the base damage of the sword and you scale it with my intelligence, and I currently have 3,400 intelligence. Now I'm putting the formula on the screen right now, which lets us get to this number. And if we actually go to a mob and attack it, as you can see, we'll be doing a little over 500,000 damage. And I'm not using Wither Goggles to simplify this calculation, since Wither Goggles add on some more additive stat boost. So that is how the scaling for magic damage works in the overworld. You take the base magic damage of this weapon, then you increase it by your amount of intelligence in the overworld, then you can increase it by any other additional buffs like Wither Goggles, and finally you add on the catacombs levels that increases your overall additive damage. But now let's take a look at what happens inside of dungeons. So now I'm in a floor 6 dungeon run, and yet again I'll be using my storm helmet simply for the purposes of simplifying the calculations here. Now as you can see, I'm doing a whopping 2.4 million with the Wither Impact. Now, why is this? Well, this is because now, instead of having only 3,400 intel, I have over 12,000. As you can see, this amount will go up to 2.5 million because I have now 14k intel. So now with the maximum intelligence buff, as you can see, I have 15,000 intelligence at the start of a run. And this gives me 2.5 million base damage, so remember this number. So now, if I actually walk into a room, let's see how much damage we'll do. So as you can see, to that undead skeleton, we did about 11 million. So how did this 2.5 million turn into 11 million in dungeons? This is where the further modifications take place. First, now there is my combat level, which is normal. But there's also the stars on this weapon right here. Now I know it says Chronos Scythe, but it's actually just a 5-star Hyperion. I just renamed it because it looks cool. And that adds some ability damage. And finally, my catacombs levels also helps with this. So as you can see, there are a variety of factors in dungeons that greatly buff the power of magic weapons. This is mainly why higher cata players can kill minis faster than lower cata players. Because since the ability damage scales with stars, and stars scale with catacombs levels, RCM can become quite powerful the higher catacombs levels you get. So very briefly, that is how magic damage works in Skyblock. So now let's finally get to the topic of why the 100mm Midas Staff is now almost entirely useless and how it got super strongly nerfed. So the Midas Staff, as you can see by this following footage, is actually tremendously powerful. I just want to test the overall damage. 2 mil? Holy, is that real? Dang, that's a lot more than Hyperion. Just in the overworld, it's doing well over 2 times the damage of the Hyperion. And remember that any damage in the overworld gets massively multiplied in dungeons because of all the scaling. This should mean that the Midas Staff will do way more damage than the Hyperion in dungeons. As you can see here, if we go into the actual dungeon run and compare the base damages, the Midas Staff's base damage completely clowns on the Hyperion's base damage by so much. There really is no competition. But if you see here, the damage of the Hyperion is more than the damage of the Midas Staff. God. That's only 8 mil. How are we doing so little? How is Hyperion doing more than a Midas staff is my question. How is that happening? I have no clue. Now, how does this happen? You might be thinking that the scaling, the intelligence scaling on these items is different, but that actually isn't true. If you actually look at it, the intelligence scaling on these items is exactly the same. So what happened? Why is the Midas staff, although having so much more base damage than the Hyperion, still doing less than the Hyperion? Well, here is where this big bug comes into play. For one reason or another, the Midas staff does not work with catacomb scaling or stars. This means that if I have 12,000 intelligence in dungeons, then it only counts the bonus from that 12k intel. It does not count any bonuses from any catacombs levels at all. And catacombs levels are one of the main things that carry RCM damage. Basically, this means that if I had 12k intel in the overworld, I would be doing the same damage with that Midas staff as I was doing in dungeons. And that is not how it's supposed to work. Now, this was not pointed out in any patch notes or anything of the sort, which makes me believe that this was an accidental change by the admins when they were probably fixing something with magic damage here or there. Now, this is really unfortunate because the reason I was testing the Midas staff in the first place is because I was pretty convinced that you could successfully RCM mini bosses using a Midas staff and Berserker passive. But it turns out that you can't simply because of this fix. Simply because of this bug. Now, what if this bug did not exist? Well, if this bug did not exist, the Master Mode dungeon scene would be completely different. The Midas staff, although it's been heavily criticized for being a really awkward weapon, is at the end of the day really powerful because of its base damage. It has a 26,000 base damage multiplier. This basically means that if you had a weapon with 26,000 base damage, you would get a Midas staff. It's kind of insane. Now, I did the math, and with a Midas staff, you would be doing over 200 million damage a hit with a Midas staff, and that is a lot more than Terminator by base hit. This would make Midas staff clearing probably better than Hyperion clearing in Master Mode 6, because you could actually kill the zombie commanders and the really high health mobs that Hyperion usually does not do enough damage to deal with. On top of this, it would be so strong that you could actually finally RCM mini bosses, and Mage could be played how it's intended. And don't even get me started on how broken Midas staff Berserker would be. You'd be doing over 1 billion damage per hit if you maxed out the Berserker passive using the Midas staff. So that concludes the video of how this super powerful mage item got completely nerfed. This is a really hard nerf, and it takes down the damage of this Midas staff by over 10-fold, as none of your catacombs levels no longer have any effect on it on the damage scaling. Thank you guys so very much for watching this video. Please consider subscribing as I'm trying to get 15,000 subscribers, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!